What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel, where for today's video we're going to be checking out some of the original Michael Bay live action movie Transformers. So as some of you may know already, I never got into Transformers until around the release of Dark of the Moon. So every now and again I like to try my hardest to kind of go back and track down some of those original figures. So for today's video we are going to be checking out all of the ones I've been able to find this year, and I would love to get your thoughts on them down in the comment section below. If you guys owned any of these, let me know what your thoughts were on them and your fondest memories of the live action movie Transformers. So let's get some of these newbies out of the way and check out the oldies. So, up first, we are throwing it all the way back to the 2007 movie with the Deluxe class Landmine. Now, this character I don't believe ever actually appeared in the film, although the robot mode is so kind of live action movie realistic that I don't think he would have looked too out of place alongside Optimus Prime and the rest of the Autobots. This guy actually looks awesome, and one thing which is really cool about him is he does actually transform into one of those militaristic vehicles that Sector 7 were using in the first Transformers film. So, that's kind of cool, super happy to finally add this guy to the collection. Now, this next one is definitely interesting to say the least. This is a live action movie rendition of Dreadwing. Now, it kind of looks like a hybrid between the Doritos Starscream and a webcam. I mean, the head sculpt to me literally looks like a camera, but it is a really weird looking Decepticon. But despite the robot mode coming across as being really weird, the jet mode is actually incredible, especially for a 2007 movie release. Now, next up is a character which I'm not sure whether or not it's from the 2007 or 2009 lineup, but this is Autobot Salvage. So, another character which never actually made an appearance in the movie, but the live action movie design is actually crazy looking. I mean, check out all of these panels that he kind of has sticking out of his back. I really like the Easter egg of spark plug kind of engraved onto the side door. The robot form does look really cool, and the truck mode is actually pretty decent as well. So, whilst this is a character that I'm not overly familiar with, it still is a really awesome robot mode design, again to have up there with some of the other live action movie characters. Then, wrapping it up for kind of non-appearance 2007 movie characters, here we have Longarm. Now, much like Landmine, the vehicle mode of this character did actually show up in the movie. This was the tow truck that Megan Fox kind of hot-wired to tow Bumblebee into the Mission City battle with, so that's kind of cool, and they did give him a robot form, which doesn't look bad, to be honest. It's actually one of the more cohesive live-action movie Michael Bay designs, although he has this really weird kind of tow arm attachment, which you just cannot remove, but it has this really wicked projectile. This is definitely a figure where I think if I ever do display him in the collection, it will more than likely be in his vehicle mode. But now is where it really begins heating up for the 2007 movie lineup, as we have the original 1977 Camaro Bumblebee. Now, I know for some of you guys this will be your very first Bumblebee that you ever owned, and you know what, it actually isn't bad. I really like how he includes those over-the-shoulder cannons, which I don't think we've seen released on any Studio Series Bumblebee, so they're kind of awesome. But much like all of the original 2007 Autobots, this guy definitely looks his best in vehicle mode. The Camaro for an older release actually looks incredible. Nevertheless, still really awesome to have this classic in the collection. And then, following on from his classic look, here we have Stealth Mode Bumblebee, which is kind of the modern take on the Camaro, but this mold is actually really decent. They used this, I think, between 2007 until around 2009, and there was a reason, because this was way better than the robot mode of the 1977 Camaro. Check out the battle mask. He had a Stinger Blaster, which could transform into an energized blade, so that's pretty sweet, and I really like kind of the Age of Extinction vibes that we have from this Stealth Mode Bumblebee. In all honesty, I kind of wish he kept that colour for Transformers 4 and Transformers 5, but yeah, this is actually a banging mould and definitely a repaint which I'm glad to add to the collection. Now we move over to some of the Voyagers, and what would a 2007 movie haul be without the original leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime? So this is the Voyager version. Again, I'm kind of surprised that it has taken this long to get this figure into my collection, but it's definitely quite a strange looking Prime. I mean, those live action movie designs were just so complicated that, to be fair, they were more than likely absolute puzzles for the design team to turn into action figures. So he does have a big ass backpack. They completely redeemed redeemed themselves though with this design once it got round to the Revenge of the Fallen leader class, but what I will say is the truck mode of this figure was incredible. It had this gimmick where when you closed the door, this projection of Peter Cullen would appear, which I believe actually did show up in a novelization for one of the live action movies, and it's still really cool to own one of the original Optimus Prime figures from the Bayverse. And then rounding it off for the Voyagers, we have Megatron. Now this, surprisingly, isn't a bad figure, and I actually really like this ice deco that he has. I guess technically this is his NBE1 form, although he does include those really strange spring-loaded feet that we saw with the original Revenge of the Fallen figure, so they do kind of suck. And then rounding things off completely for the 2007 movie portion, we have the leader class desert redeco of Decepticon Brawl. Now I think this is by far one of the best original live action movie figures that was ever created. Even by today's standards, this thing is an absolute tank. He is enormous. Definitely one of the biggest leader class figures I think they ever made. And check out how armed to the teeth this guy was. He had a bayonet, a machine gun, missile pods, dual turrets up top, this underslung turret, this massive cannon on this side, and bayonets embedded in his shins. This thing quite literally was the definition of Devastator, and the tank mode is just so crazy good. This was kind of the last large-scale live-action movie Brawl we ever had, so I'm definitely excited to compare this with next year's MPM Brawl. That is going to be a really awesome comparison. But now we jump ahead 2 years to 2009, the Revenge of the Fallen line, which I will be real, I think is by far one of the best live-action movie lines we ever had. First up, we have Scout class, which I guess nowadays would be considered as a core class, and this is Depth Charge. Now, he does transform into quite literally this militaristic-looking ship, and it's classic Hasbro, making one of the largest scale characters into the smallest scale class. This thing really should have been a leader class at the very least, but for Scout class, it's actually so well detailed. The robot mode looks crazy. So yeah, this is a character which I am so happy to finally add to the collection. Then we jump to the deluxes, and this is a figure which up until a few months ago I had no idea even existed. This is a live action movie take on the Conehead Dirge. That was one thing which was so awesome about the Revenge of the Fallen movie line. They would release figures which never even appeared in the movie, and that's something we don't tend to see too often in studio series, although I'm really hoping that upcoming concept series line does soon change that. But check out how awesome he looks. I could definitely believe this to be Dirge in the Bayverse. You know, the head sculpt I think looks really cool. Check out the details that we have for the chest, and he even includes those classic null rays, which this time are proper firing projectiles which attach onto either side of his arms. Back in the day, Transformers that could transform into jets were no stranger to deluxe class. So yeah, it is such a cool figure, and definitely one that I'm so glad that I have recently discovered. And then, as a companion piece to Dirge, we have Conehead Thrust. Now, this guy is a straight-up repaint of Breakaway, so it's a little underwhelming, although I will say the design is incredible. This is a character which I'm really hoping to see a Studio Series Voyager class of, because as a deluxe class, it's really decent, but I can only imagine how much better it would look in a larger scale, and the jet mode is just fantastic. For a 2009 deluxe class, Hasbro were cooking good, so definitely a character design which I hope to see updated in the future. But now we go back to the roots of Revenge of the Fallen with characters that actually appeared in the film. So first up, we have Deluxe Class Ratchet. Now, for so many years, I've heard many collectors say that before Studio Series, this was the best version of Ratchet that Hasbro ever made. And I do think that to be true. This is definitely a huge improvement over the Voyager, and it's honestly kind of surprising they never just took this and upscaled it to be a Voyager, as robot mode wise, if I'm going to be honest, in some ways, it's actually nicer than the Studio Series version. I mean, the head sculpt's pretty cool. I love the shoulder design. The leg design for the most part is okay, with the exception of these big massive pieces of kibble just hanging off the side of the hips, but the backpack is awesome. So much nicer than the Studio Series version. This actually may be a really awesome contender to the Studio Series version. What do you guys think? Do you think the new release is better than the old release, or vice versa? Definitely be sure to let me know down below. Now this next one, I'm going to be honest, I purely picked up for nostalgia reasons. We have the original 2009 Sideswipe. Now I really do think the new Studio Series version is way better than this original one, but I'm going to be honest guys, for this being the first ever pass at this live action movie Sideswipe design, Hasbro did a decent job, especially when it comes to that amazing Corvette Stingray alt form. As a child, that was my dream car growing up. It looked insanely awesome on the big screen, but robot mode wise, not too dissimilar to what we saw on screen. Now, jumping over to Voyagers, this has to be one of the biggest holy grails out of the bunch. This is Voyager class Recon Ironhide. Now, I've been after this guy for years. I don't believe he ever actually saw a UK release, so trying to track him down on the aftermarket for years has been like pulling teeth. So I am so happy to finally add him to the collection, and there was a reason why he was so elusive. This guy is badass. He's literally decked out with every single weapon that you could want Ironhide to wield. We get the classic cannons, we get machine guns, a dagger, this crossbow weapon which is formed out of his front bumper. He's got this roll cage on the back of the truck. It was just a crazy take on the Ironhide design, so I'm so glad to have this guy in my collection. And now we jump into 2010 with the Hunt for the Decepticons Sidearm Sideswipe. Now in some ways I think this subline may be even better than Revenge of the Fallen, Sidearm Sideswipe being a prime example of that, because if you were to compare him to that previous 2009 release, there is a huge upgrade. I mean, before Studio Series, this I believe was considered as being the best Sideswipe of all time for the live action films, and for good reason. The robot mode is just so incredibly detailed. He actually included his sidearm pistols, which I believe we saw him use more in the film than his actual blades. The only issue with the Hasbro release was that it came with this really strange red deco on the front, which you could only get around if you picked up the Takara version, so that was definitely a little crafty, but mold wise it still is a really solid entry. And wrapping up this whole video completely, we finally have the Hunt for the Decepticons Voyager class Seaspray. So another character that never actually made an appearance in the movie, although I loved what Hasbro did with his design. It's very G1 inspired, yet literally looks like they took that original 80s design and just plonked it into live action. The robot mode is so cool. He really does appear to be a deep sea diver. He's got the breather mask. He's actually got flippers on his feet, which I thought was so cool. The propellers from the hovercraft mode do act as thrusters here for robot form, and the water cannons do become his blasters in this mode as well. It was just such an insanely cool looking figure, and is again another design which I would love to see Hasbro adapt into their Studio Series concept series. So that has been my live action movie Michael Bay Transformers haul. I would love to get your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you guys think of some of these figures featured in this video? Are there any here that you guys still own? And if you do so, what are your favorites? I want to thank you guys all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!